I was just saying Louis doesn't understand social distancing. So he goes up like wanting to cuddle everything, and particularly any babies younger than him.
Prince Louis has always been seen as one of the most fascinating members of the British royal family, full of energy, naturally intelligent, and always able to turn any moment into an opportunity to shine in front of the cameras. Yet behind those carefree smiles and familiar public appearances, no one expected that a sudden announcement from Buckingham Palace could shake the entire nation so profoundly. This unexpected news immediately drew all attention toward Prince Louis and Prince George, leaving the public deeply worried about what might truly be happening behind the palace doors. So what could have pushed the royals to speak out so urgently, breaking their long-standing tradition of silence? Leave a comment with 1 if you resonate with today's story, or 0 if you have a different opinion. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss what comes next, where we reveal every hidden detail starting right now. A royal declaration unlike any other. The words from Buckingham Palace lit up screens across the nation, every syllable carrying a weight rarely seen in royal communications. It was not about protocol engagements or ceremonial appearances. It was about Prince George and Prince Louis, the young princes whose laughter once warmed millions. Now the palace has acknowledged something intensely private, quietly serious, and heartbreakingly real. Even senior staff were surprised. No whispers, no early warning. The official statement was released abruptly. The family expressed gratitude for the public's kindness as they address a private matter involving Prince George and Prince Louis. For veteran royal reporters, the tone was astonishing. It conveyed emotion, seriousness, and genuine concern in a way Buckingham rarely permits. The choice of wording hinted at challenges far beyond typical childhood struggles, prompting the public to question what had driven such an unusually candid message. Speculation spread almost instantly. Some insiders suggested it was rooted in the turbulence of the past year. Concerns about the king's health. Princess Catherine's long recovery and the constant scrutiny from the media have created quiet pressures that even the youngest members of the royal family can feel. Teachers at Lambrook School received discreet calls. Upcoming family gatherings were delayed, and staff were required to act with a new level of caution, aware that even the smallest mistake could trigger unwanted attention. This announcement revealed a rare willingness by the monarchy to acknowledge vulnerability, humanizing a family typically presented through grand ceremony. However, it also emphasized the careful deliberation behind royal decision-making. The palace's statement, cautiously worded, was both protective and measured, signaling that this was a private matter, not a scandal. Observers noted the contrast with the royal family's public image. Prince William, increasingly steady and dignified in his role as heir, appeared unshaken, reinforcing the monarchy's focus on continuity and calm authority. Meanwhile, whispers suggested that Prince Harry's recent travels and activities had been drawing attention again, though no official connection had been confirmed. The palace remained silent on specific details, allowing the weight of the announcement to speak for itself. Across Britain, households paused to absorb the news. Phones lit up with worried messages. Televisions buzzed with reports, and social media swirled with speculation. For a moment, the nation witnessed a royal family that looked like any other, facing private trials in a very public world. Prince George and Prince Louis, long seen as symbols of innocence and joy, became a quiet reminder. Even within the gilded walls of Buckingham Palace, life can be fragile, and every heartbeat matters. Acknowledging this, the monarchy balanced duty with humanity, sending a message both subtle and profound. The palace reminded the world that beyond titles, crowns, and ceremony, family is still family, and even princes can be vulnerable. But even as the palace emphasized family over titles, one lingering question remained. What would Prince William's next move be in the unusually quiet courtyard of Kensington Palace? In that moment, the entire palace fell silent. No one expected the grounds of Kensington Palace to become that still. But that silence felt almost deliberate, as if even the wind had paused to listen. Prince William stepped forward slowly, not as a future king, not as a polished royal figure. The public, accustomed to ceremonies, instead saw a father carrying a weight he could no longer hide. The cameras pointed at him seemed to fade into the background. What mattered then was the story he was finally ready to share. He did not begin with formal greetings or royal protocol. Instead, William took a deep breath, as though he had endured months of sleepless nights. And then, in a soft voice that contrasted sharply with his usual composed presence, he addressed the rumors that had circulated in the press since early 2024. This time, it was not about duty. The issue was not protocol. It was his children, Prince George and Prince Louis, and the private storm the family had tried to manage behind closed doors. What William revealed next was enough to make even veteran reporters lower their pens. He spoke of the emotional toll Catherine's long recovery had taken on their family. The palace had confirmed her condition earlier that year, but no article had prepared the world for what her absence meant for their sons. According to William, Louis was the first to struggle, but George soon began carrying burdens far beyond his years. The two boys, usually inseparable, reacted differently, one with confusion, the other with quiet fear. He recalled the nights when Louis quietly crawled into his room, eyes shimmering with questions he didn't know how to ask. And the days when George, usually calm and protective of his siblings, seemed to withdraw, trying to appear strong while silently wondering why everything felt so wrong. William admitted he hadn't noticed the early signs. Royal duties, medical updates, and the pressure of preparing for a new era under King Charles had blended together until he felt he was acting on instinct rather than clarity. He said one moment changed everything. Louis had whispered a question late one night, a question that pierced straight through William's defenses. "Is Mum going to leave us like Granddad?" Mentioning King Charles's diagnosis might have sounded harmless, but it stunned William. In that instant, he realized both boys were carrying fears far bigger than their ages should allow. And George, having overheard quietly, left the room to comfort his brother in the hallway. It was a scene William said he would never forget. He also spoke of Princess Charlotte's efforts to shield her brothers. The normally composed young princess had been overheard crying quietly to her nanny, overwhelmed by the role she was trying to take on. A sister, a helper, a tiny protector. It wasn't her responsibility, yet she felt it deeply. William's confession wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polished. It was profoundly human. He pleaded for compassion from the media not as a royal issuing instructions, but as a father trying to shield his children from relentless public scrutiny. "They're just children," he said softly. "Please give them time and space to heal." For a moment, even the camera lenses seemed to hesitate. The press later debated his words, discussing the deeper implications and wondering whether this emotional openness hinted at larger tensions within the royal family. But in that brief, unforgettable moment, the only story that truly mattered was the genuine vulnerability of a father standing between the world and his children. And somewhere within the palace walls, The echo of his confession was felt by every member of the family, especially the young princes whose lives were forever shaped by the silence William chose to break. Did the silence William finally broke hide more than just family secrets? What was happening inside Adelaide Cottage that left Prince Louis and Prince George trapped in invisible chaos? The silent battles of Prince Louis and Prince George. The quiet corridors of Adelaide Cottage carried a weight no royal smile could conceal. Inside, Prince Louis and Prince George were sinking into an invisible storm, a world of quiet fear and confusion felt only by those closest to them. Charlotte, the ever-protective sister, tried her best to shield her youngest brother. Mature beyond her years, she listened to whispers and worried glances, maintaining a fragile balance that even adults would struggle to hold. But even her strength had limits, and the truth surfaced long before anyone could hide it. Catherine, still trying to regain her composure, completely broke down upon hearing what had happened. Louis, once a whirlwind of laughter and curiosity, had begun withdrawing. Breakfast went untouched, garden games, abandoned toys left untouched. George, usually loud and confident, watched his brother's energy drain away and felt the weight settle on his own shoulders. The children's natural joy was replaced by a heavy silence. The breaking point came during a class activity. A seemingly harmless question. "Is your mum still sick?" pierced Louis's fragile shell, shattered. He went completely silent, eyes filled with confusion and fear. That night, he refused to eat, refused to smile, and the next morning he refused to return to school. It was a quiet but urgent wake-up call for William and Catherine, who realized that shielding their children from the outside world was no longer enough. Behind closed doors, aides and psychological consultants were summoned. A decision was made to temporarily withdraw Louis and George from Lamach, an unconventional step within royal circles carried out without any media display. The world, still expecting smiling portraits and perfectly staged appearances, remained unaware. Behind the palace walls, another reality began to unfold, a fragile one, where two young princes were allowed to exist without expectation. Adelaide Cottage became a refuge, a space where they could heal without scrutiny. Catherine, despite her own limitations, spent hours reading, listening, and simply being present. Her presence became a lifeline for Louis, an anchor of stability amid uncertainty. And then an unexpected figure stepped in. Princess Anne, known for her strength and unwavering resolve, quietly vowed to support her nephews. Her calm authority brought stability to the family and became a model of resilience for both Louise and George. Under Anne's guidance, the boys began learning to manage their emotions, discovering that even royal children can face vulnerability and emerge stronger. Within those private rooms, the monarchy revealed a side of itself the public seldom sees. Care that is not bound by ceremony, protection that requires courage, and the recognition that even princes are not immune to life's silent battles. For Louis and George, the path to healing had begun slowly, cautiously, but sincerely. A reminder that even in a world of titles and tradition, the heart still comes first. What happened when observers looked more closely at Adelaide Cottage? And what surprising truths did they uncover about the silent struggles of Prince Louis and Prince George? How did Prince Louis and Prince George find their way back? Tension inside Adelaide Cottage had reached a breaking point. Prince Louis and Prince George, once inseparable and mischievous, were withdrawing into silence, their laughter replaced by quiet corners and unanswered questions. Charlotte had tried her best standing as a support for her younger brother, shielding him from whispered conversations and worried adult glances when they thought the children weren't listening. But even her determination was beginning to waver, and the truth of Louis's despair was revealed before anyone was prepared. Catherine, already fragile after recent trials, was devastated when she saw Louis curled up alone, refusing breakfast and ignoring the garden games he once adored. George, sensing the tension and the growing distance between them, became quietly protective, but his youthful energy could not fill the spaces left behind by the invisible storm. The breaking point came on what seemed like an ordinary morning when an offhand question at school, "Is your mum still sick?" caused Louis to shut down completely. If you believe the secret struggle between Prince Louis and Prince George still hides untold truths, leave a comment with one. If you think the situation is more complicated than we know, leave a 0. Don't forget to like and subscribe to catch the next revelations shaking Buckingham Palace to its core. That night, he refused to speak, eat, or return to class. William, exhausted and overwhelmed, confided privately in Princess Anne. In the stillness of the corridor, away from the palace's watchful eyes, he admitted he no longer knew how to reach his son. Anne listened, calm yet perceptive, and offered a suggestion that startled even him. "Send him to me," she said simply. "Let him work with his hands. Let him hear the birds, not the whispers." Just a few days later, Louis and George were quietly moved to Anne's countryside estate. Far from cameras, reporters, and the pressure of public life, mornings were no longer defined by royal duties lessons or carefully staged appearances. Instead, they began with simple routines: watering plants, clearing leaves, tending the garden. Anne worked alongside them, telling stories not of crowns or scandals, but of horses' childhood mischief and lessons in patience and trust. Gradually, the boys began to open up. Louis, once withdrawn and timid, began smiling again, then laughing. George, watching his brother, found his energy returning. Horseback riding became a turning point. Anne taught Louise and George that riding was not for show, but for trust, control, and confidence. Louis, hesitant at first, found strength in every stride. The wind blew away the fear that had clung to him. Anne's steady presence became a lifeline, not through therapy or palace rules, but through connection, responsibility, and simplicity. Behind the scenes, Anne became a confidant to William and Catherine. "He has Diana's fire," she told Catherine one afternoon. "He just needs guidance." Those words struck William deeply. Diana, too, was once misunderstood, and now her grandson was rediscovering his light under the care of someone who understood the weight of royal silence. As Louis and George's world began to settle, the palace outside continued its quiet, carefully measured rhythm. Royal life moved forward, unpredictable, yet enduring. But for the first time in months, the youngest heirs had found peace, not through titles or appearances, but through patience, love, and the steady guidance of the Princess Royal. Yet when palace insiders examined her influence, it created a surprising ripple effect on the tensions surrounding Prince Louis's secretive public appearances. The hidden struggle between Prince Louis and Prince George persisted. Tension wrapped around the palace like a thick fog. Whispers gave way to hurried murmurs as staff rushed through corridors carrying news that could no longer be concealed. Somewhere inside Buckingham Palace, a confidential memo had leaked, hinting at a plan to keep Prince Louis out of public view a strategy supposedly meant to protect him, but worded in a way that unsettled even the most seasoned staffers. If you believe the secret struggle between Prince Louis and Prince George still hides untold truths, leave a comment with one. If you think the situation is more complicated than we know, leave a 0. Don't forget to like and subscribe to catch the next revelations shaking Buckingham Palace to its core. Phrases like discreet approach and unexpected appearances painted a picture of control rather than care. The memo suggested the young prince's public presence should be limited, as if his very existence posed a risk to the carefully curated royal image. Prince George felt the tremor as well. His brother's silence puzzled him, and the lively spark that usually defined George dimmed under the weight of quiet worry. Together, the two boys became a mirror reflecting a family struggling to balance privacy with public duty. Charlotte, always the steady guide, shielded Louis from the whispers and tense glances adults exchanged when they believed no child was listening. She stood firmer than her age would suggest, trying to protect her younger brother from the heavy, unspoken pressures inside the palace. But even her determination began to waver, the weight of fear pressing too heavily to contain any longer. William was furious. Sources said he confronted senior royal advisors behind closed doors, demanding to know who had approved such a cold directive without consulting him or Catherine. Seeing his son treated as a burden was unacceptable. Catherine's reaction, however, was even harsher. She reportedly called the memo inhumane, accusing senior staff of hiding behind their positions to avoid responsibility, surprising words from a woman known for her calm composure. Her fury sent shockwaves through the palace, rippling down corridors that had long relied on silence and caution to preserve dignity. Then Princess Anne stepped in. Calm, decisive, and unwavering, she walked straight into the chaos. The Princess Royal, who had quietly helped Louis rediscover joy and confidence, confronted those responsible for the memo. You do not confine children, she was said to have declared. You protect them. Her firm, unshakable words silenced the entire room. For the first time in weeks, it felt as though the machinery of the monarchy paused, making room for the emotional well-being of its children rather than rigid protocol. For Louis and George, this marked a turning point. Outside the palace, curiosity had begun to simmer. Reporters noticed the boys' absence at family events and public appearances. Hashtags began to trend. The questions remained unanswered, fueling speculation. Under mounting pressure, the palace finally acted. A statement was released, direct and unprecedented, confirming that both princes were receiving mental recovery support under the care of professionals and family. The phrase mental recovery sent shockwaves across media platforms. They acknowledged what parents around the world already understood: no title, castle, or privilege can shield a child from the slow ache of emotional suffering. Attached to the official statement was a handwritten letter from Catherine, penned with the careful emotional strokes of a mother trying to keep her family steady. In the letter, she wrote, "He is strong but young, and we are learning to navigate this together as a family." There was no embellishment, no attempt to hide or justify anything, only the pure honesty of a mother who sees her child's pain. These simple words, though modest in form, carried immense emotional weight, humanizing the struggle in a way that few royal messages ever have. The pain was no longer something to conceal, but something to acknowledge and face together. The moment the letter surfaced, social media erupted. Parents everywhere began sharing their own stories. the silent battles their children faced with anxiety, academic pressure, or emotional struggles they themselves had once been unsure how to name. Genuine conversations blossomed, forming a wave of unprecedented support. Mental health charities immediately praised the transparency, calling it a rare but crucial step toward breaking the stigma surrounding emotional well-being, especially when such vulnerability came from a family long seen as a symbol of strength and perfection. For the first time, the public was allowed a glimpse of the fragility beneath the royal family's polished exterior. Real people with real fears, real pauses, and tears that would never appear in front of the press. Behind the gilded palace walls, often viewed as impenetrable aids, quietly admitted that the truth, however painful, was far better than months of silence and pretense. In that moment, a new doorway opened. The monarchy was no longer just a symbol of power and elegance, but also a family struggling like any other, and that acknowledgement made them more relatable than ever before. Buckingham Palace had shown the world not perfection but humanity, and in doing so reshaped how the monarchy protects and nurtures its youngest heirs. In this rare transparency, Louis and George were no longer just princes. First and foremost, they were children, and the palace finally recognized that some battles are fought not in public but in quiet corners out of sight. And as silence settled over the palace, an unspoken understanding emerged regarding the silent struggles of Prince Louis and Prince George. And what would Charlotte do to keep them grounded? The silent battle between Prince Louis and Prince George continued. Inside Adelaide Cottage, a heavy stillness hung over the once lively home. Prince Louis and Prince George, once inseparable in their games and laughter, were now sinking into silence, their energy replaced by long moments of loneliness and quiet unease. Charlotte, stepping far beyond her age, tried to become a pillar for Louis, shielding him from the tension she sensed among the adults. She whispered jokes, told him stories, and held his hand at bedtime. But even her protective efforts could not stop the cracks forming in her brother's spirit. Eventually, the truth slipped past the careful barriers and reached Catherine in a moment of quiet panic. Catherine's heart ached at the realization. Louis, once full of life, now sat at breakfast, almost silent, barely touching his food. George, always perceptive, felt the increasing distance as well. Feeling the invisible weight pressing on his younger brother, George struggled too. For William and Catherine, the truth was harsh. Their efforts to shield the children from public eyes, cameras, and the press were not enough. Hidden wounds were forming quiet but persistent behind smiles and carefully curated appearances. Even the simplest moments, breakfast laughter and playful stairway stories, were replaced by long silences and anxious glances between adults afraid of being overheard. Then came the turning point. An innocent question in class, "Is your mum still sick?" shattered Louis's fragile calm. He completely withdrew, refusing to speak or eat, and William and Catherine immediately decided to remove him from Lamach. No public statement, no grand wording, only quiet, urgent action to protect their child. Homeschooling began under close supervision, focused not on academic performance, but on emotional safety and healing. For the first time in modern royal history, a child was allowed to recover without expectations or ceremony. George also received special support through structured play and one-on-one lessons, helping him manage his own worries while witnessing his brother's struggles. Afternoons were devoted to art therapy, giving Louis a safe space to paint the storms and chaos he still couldn't express in words. Nature walks became a daily ritual offering peace in birdsong and wildflowers instead of flashing cameras and scheduled appearances. Slowly, their home transformed into a serene sanctuary of care. Public perception began to shift as people praised William and Catherine for their courage and transparency, comparing them to Princess Diana, who once broke royal silence to speak about her own mental health struggles. This choice redefined the monarchy's true strength, not through rigid composure or polished appearances, but through honesty, sensitivity, and compassion. But the peace didn't last long. Across the Atlantic, Prince Harry broke his silence in a candid interview, warning of the consequences of burying royal pain. Meghan added, "Protecting children must always come before protecting an institution's image." What had been a private act of care meant to shield Louis, and George suddenly became the spark for a global debate. William, furious, was said to have exclaimed, "He's not here for this." Viewing the intrusion as betrayal, Catherine focused entirely on their sons, refusing to let external turmoil disrupt their fragile progress. Inside the palace, opinions were divided. Some believed Harry and Meghan had forced overdue reflection on the emotional scars the royal life had long buried. For decades, psychological trauma had been swept beneath gilded carpets and disguised under discipline. But for Louis and George, the story was different. A story of recovery, resilience, and a childhood freed from the crushing weight of expectation. Even amid whispers and speculation, the Wales family quietly reshaped how royal children are protected. Their mental health was placed above ceremonial duty or public image, creating a precedent few expected. When duty and public perception collided, what unexpected ripple did it send through Adelaide Cottage, quietly shaping the hidden world of Prince Louis and Prince George, a garden of silent strength. The palace was quiet, but beneath that silence, tension pulsed louder than any headline. Inside Adelaide Cottage, the days were thick with unspoken fears. Prince Louis and Prince George, once mischievous playmates, were now retreating into their own quiet worlds. The laughter that once danced across the hallways had faded like sunlight, leaving behind muted echoes. They spent hours together in their room, staring into the garden. They no longer played in tracing familiar paths with distant, distracted eyes. Charlotte, ever the protective sister, tried to listen to the silent worries threading through the house. But even her determination had limits, and soon the cracks within the family's private world became impossible to ignore. Catherine, still recovering from recent difficulties, looked at her children with growing concern. Breakfast went untouched. Lunch passed unnoticed. Smiles grew rare. Subtle signs of emotional distress, restless hands, quiet withdrawal, long silences became impossible to dismiss. Sensing his brother's isolation, George began withdrawing as well, creating a silent tension the adults couldn't explain or mend. The breaking point came during an ordinary school activity. A seemingly harmless question about their mother's health shattered Louis's fragile composure. That night, he refused to speak, refused to eat, and firmly declared he would not return to school the next day. William and Catherine were faced with an impossible choice: preserve form and tradition, or protect the fragile hearts of their children. After careful consideration, a quiet decision was made. Louis and George would leave public school and instead learn under private tutors and specialists. Royal aides coordinated a discreet plan that prioritized emotional safety over royal protocol. This transition was unusual, nearly unprecedented in the modern monarchy. But for William and Catherine, there was no other option. Their children's well-being came first. Every moment was planned with care, long walks through the palace gardens, quiet afternoons with books and stories and simple time together that bonded them far beyond any polished expectations. Then came the moment that captured the world's attention in a way no press release ever could. A single photo quietly shared by a close family friend showed Louis and George crouched beside their mother in the palace garden, planting flowers. No crowns, no ceremony, no formal gestures, only sincerity and simplicity. Louis's face, once shadowed by fear, now glowed with curiosity and trust. George, too, looked lighter as he worked alongside his mother and brother. In that peaceful setting, something profound emerged. Resilience. The image spread almost instantly, not as a performance, but as a symbol of healing and hope. Public reaction shifted overnight. Support poured in not only for the young princes, but for William and Catherine's decision to place love above headlines. Mental health organizations reported unprecedented engagement. Parents shared their own stories and campaigns emerged calling for greater attention to children's mental well-being. Behind palace walls, conversations shifted toward the future. Could Louise and George one day support mental health initiatives not out of duty, but from lived experience? Could their story reshape how royal childhoods are protected and nurtured? In a monarchy often criticized for rigidity, the Wales family quietly yet boldly took a realistic step forward. In a sunlit garden under the gentle morning light, the two boys found their laughter again, teaching the world a quiet lesson. Even behind gilded walls, healing can happen, and courage can bloom from the smallest actions. This photo was more than a picture. It was a promise that resilience, care, and love could reshape legacy one shared moment at a time. And now the final question for you. What do you think truly pushed Buckingham Palace to break tradition and reveal this shocking information about Prince Louis and Prince George? Leave a 1 if you believe this was necessary transparency, or a 0 if you think there are still secrets yet to be uncovered. And if today's story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people can understand what really lies behind the palace walls.